Hello and welcome friends. Today we will be discussing one of the most important institutions of society, that's the marriage. Marriage and family sociologically signify the stage of greater social advancement. It's indicative of man's entry into the world of emotion and feeling, harmony and culture. Long before the institution of marriage developed, men and women may have lived together, procreated children and died unwept and unsung. Marriage as an institution developed over the time. It may have been accepted as a measure of social discipline and as an expedient to eliminate social stress due to the sex rivalry. The growing sense and sensibility may have necessitated the acceptance of norms for formalizing the union between man and woman. Societies evolved mannerism and method for selection of the spouses according to their peculiar socio-economic and political conditions and in accordance with their levels of cultural advancement. This explains, on the one hand, the origin of various forms of marriage and on the other, the differences in the attitude of societies towards the institution of marriage. Some have accepted it purely as contractual arrangement between weds, while others hold it as an sacred union between man and woman. Now friends, let's talk about the meaning of marriage. In the ordinary meaning of the term, marriage is the social recognition of the practice by which men and women live together as husband and wife to raise a family. Edward Westermarck defined marriage as the more or less durable connection between male and female, lasting beyond the mere act propagation till after the birth of offspring. Malinowski defined marriage as a contract for the production and maintenance of children. It's, as Hurton and Hunt say, the approved social pattern whereby two or more persons establish a family. People do not marry only because it's their social duty to perpetuate the institution of family or because the scriptures recommend matrimony, but because they lived in a family as children and cannot get over the feeling that being in a family is the only proper way to live in society. It's the first and permanent social institution. The ancient sociologists, by declaring marriage as sanskara, elevated it to high cultural level without taking away from it the procreative and family characteristic. The essential thing about marriage is that it's a stable relationship in which a man and woman are socially permitted to have children. The right to have children implies, of course, the right to sexual relations. According to a definition of marriage by Murdoch, two other conditions must be fulfilled, namely, regular or normal cohabitation in the same household and some degree of economic cooperation. It's true that relationships with the full complex of rights and obligations specified by Murdoch exist almost all societies. At the same time, in virtually every society, an adult couple of opposite sexes may live in the same house or cooperate in the economic production without having sexual rights in each other, and there are very often recognized relationships with sexual rights but lacking either common residence or economic cooperation. The amount of economic cooperation in marriages varies a great deal. In early American farm families, the husband and wife were the managers and chief workers on the farm, and this is still so in most societies with large peasant populations. In modern urban societies, however, family economic cooperation, although it's seldom limited to joint consumption of goods and services entirely produced outside the household, is not the main form of economic cooperation in the society. Marriage can be recognized by a state, an organization, a religious authority, a tribal group, a local community, or peers. No society leaves marriage unregulated. It is so important that children be cared for and properly trained that there are always norms concerning what persons under what conditions and in what manner may establish a marriage relationship, what they will be expected to do once they are married, and how they may dissolve their relationship, and under what conditions. The total pattern of these norms for a particular society is the institution of marriage. Now friends, let's talk about the types of marriage. The type, functions and characteristics of marriage vary from culture to culture and can change over time. In general, there are two types: civil marriage and religious marriage. And typically, marriages employ a combination of both. Marriage has large variety of forms. These forms can be identified on the basis of the number of partners and rules governing who can marry whom. In terms of number of partners that can legitimately enter into matrimony, we have two forms of marriage, namely monogamy and polygamy. Number 1. Monogamy. Monogamy is the form in which an individual is institutionally permitted to have only one spouse at a time. Laura Bedzig argues that in the 6 large, highly stratified early states, commoners were generally monogamous, but the elites practiced de facto polygamy. Those states included Mesopotamia, Egypt, Mexico, Peru, India, and China. The ancient Greeks and Romans were monogamous in the sense that men were not allowed to have more than one wife or to cohabit with concubines during marriage. However, there is also a strong tendency for large modern societies to be monogamous. When culture or social anthropologists and other social scientists use the term monogamy, the meaning is social or marital monogamy. Marital monogamy may be further distinguished between 1. Marriage once in lifetime, 2. Marriage with only one person at a time, in contrast to bigamy or polygamy, and 3. Serial monogamy, remarriage after divorce or death. In many societies, individuals are permitted to marry again after on the death of the first spouse or after divorce, but they cannot have more than one spouse at one and the same time. Such a monogamous marriage is termed as serial monogamy. B. Polygamy. Polygamy is a state of marriage to many spouses. It is a term covering both polygyny and polyandry. Number 1. Polygyny. Polygyny is a form of marriage which permits a man to have at a time 2 or more wives. Polygyny as an institution is not found only in primitive societies. Muslims hold polygyny as the ideal and is fairly common in such highly civilized non-Muslim societies as China, India, and countries of Latin America. The practice is, however, losing its popularity due to the changing socio-economic conditions. Polygynous marriages can be distinguished between sororal polygyny, in which a man marrying a woman is taken to be the husband of her several sisters as well, and non-sororal, when the co-wives are not related. Polygyny may also result from the practice of levirate marriage. In such cases, the deceased man's heir may inherit his assets and wife, or more usually, his brothers may marry the widow. This provides support for the widow and her children, usually also members of the brother's kin group, and maintains the tie between the husband and wife's kin groups. The sororate is like the levirate in that a widower must marry the sister of his dead wife. The wife's family, in other words, may provide a replacement for her, thus maintaining the ties between them. Both levirate and sororate may result in a man having multiple wives. Number 2. Polyandry. The other form of polygamy is polyandry, in which a woman is permitted to have 2 or more husbands at the same time. This form of marriage is extremely rare. One of the best described examples is the marriage of the Marquesans of Oceania. Among the Marquesans, the joint husbands are unrelated by blood, whereas among the Todas of India, for example, the joint husbands are often brothers. Polyandry also occurs in western Tibet. Polyandry was mainly prevalent in the Kinnu region, a part of Himachal in India, which is close to the Tibet or currently the Indo-China border. Apart from Kinnur, polyandry was practiced in South India among the Toda tribes of Nilgiris, Nayars of Travancore and Izhawas of Malabar. It is probable that early writers often treated as polyandry relationships that were not stable marriages of several men to same woman and hence were not genuine polyandry. Among the Jarawa of Africa, old men with young wives permit younger men to visit the wives for sexual relations, but the younger men have none of the responsibilities of husbands. In this case, the older men are indulgent in order to prevent their economically productive wives from running away. Moreover, any children the wives may produce belong to the husband. Polyandry seems to be associated with poor economic conditions. In western Tibet, for example, the wealthy nobles are likely to be polygynous, while poor men in the lower strata have to contend with polyandry. Polyandry is of two forms: fraternal polyandry and non-fraternal polyandry. Fraternal polyandry is a form of polyandry in which a woman is married to two or more men who are one another's brothers. Fraternal polyandry is found in certain areas of Tibet and Nepal, where polyandry is accepted as a social practice. The Toda people of southern India practice fraternal polyandry, but monogamy has become prevalent recently. In contemporary Hindu society, polyandrous marriages in the agrarian societies in Malwa regions of Punjab are occurring to avoid division of farming land. The children born are taken to be that of the eldest brother. The popular Hindu epic Mahabharata provides the first striking example of such polyandry. Draupadi, daughter of king of Patiala, being married to 5 brothers. The non-fraternal polyandry is a form of marriage which allows a woman to marry more than one man at a time, and her husbands are not related to each other as brother. Thus, in non-fraternal polyandry, a woman has several husbands who are not brothers. In some primitive tribes, the wife visits from husband to satisfy their sex urge by turn. The child born of this sort of union is regarded as the child of the husbands only after performing certain rituals. This type of marriage is found among the Nayars of Kerala. Now friends, let us talk about the rules of restriction which define or which differentiate marriage into endogamy and exogamy. Marriage is not a mere license to live as spouses. It provides the basis of social structure and involves social, mutual and individual obligations. Forms of marriage based on rules governing eligibility, ineligibility of mates is classified as endogamy and exogamy. Number 1. Endogamy. Endogamy requires an individual to marry within a culturally defined group of which he or she is already a member, as for example caste, ethnic group, tribe, clan and class. It implies that one should marry only within one's group. Marrying outside the specified group is prohibited. Endogamy is common in many cultures and ethnic groups. Several ethnic religious groups are traditionally more endogamous, although sometimes with the added dimension of requiring marital religious conversion. This permits an exogamous marriage as the convert, by accepting the partner's religion, becomes accepted within the endogamous rules. Certain groups, such as Orthodox Jews, have practiced endogamy as an inherent part of their religious beliefs and traditions. Notable examples of endogamous groups have been the Jews, Armenians, Turkmens, Old Order Amish and the Parsi of India. Number 2. Exogamy. Exogamy, the reverse of endogamy, requires the individual to marry outside his or her own group. The incest taboo, that is, marrying within the degree of prohibition, is universally accepted. The degree of prohibition, however, differs from society to society. Roman Catholic Church does not permit a widower to marry his sister-in-law. Marriage of cousins among the Muslims is not uncommon. The exogamy principle here has been given a wide extension. Marriage is prohibited among the relations of common origin, that is, those bound by the pinda offering. The sapindas, that is, of the same body, cannot marry among themselves, which we call as pinda exogamy. The man and woman of same gotra also cannot marry amongst themselves, which is called as gotra exogamy. The prohibition also covers the prava relations, which is called as pravara exogamy. Members of the group of common spiritual bond are forbidden to marry amongst themselves. Some tribes like the Mundas and Nagas do not marry someone from same village and the place of their same residence, called khel, which we call as village exogamy. Within these rules of restriction, there is a kind of a marriage under which a man can marry from his own caste or from those below, but a woman can marry only in her caste or above, which is known as anuloma, and another form of the marriage, that's pratiloma, wherein a woman marries to a man from lower caste, which is not permitted. Within this framework, marriages have also been designated as hypergamy and hypogamy. Hypergamy is the act or practice of marrying someone of higher caste or status than oneself. Although the term is not gendered, it is generally used by social scientists to refer to women marrying higher status men rather than to men marrying higher status women. Forms of hypergamy have been practiced throughout history, including in India, Imperial China, ancient Greece, the Ottoman Empire, and feudal Europe. Marriages in rural India are increasingly examples of hypergamy. Farmers and other rural workers want their daughters to have access to city life, for which metropolitan connections comes internet access, better job opportunities, and higher caste social circles. The word hypogamy typically refers to instances of the inverse occurring, marrying a person of lower social class or status. Now let's talk about marriage as a form of exchange. One of the most variable aspects of different marriage systems is the degree of choice open to the individual. In no system is there absolute freedom of choice. At the very least, the incest taboo limits choice in every society. Any marriage system may be regarded as a system of exchange between groups. In the United States and most European countries, the groups involved are families and the exchange is indirect. Each family, of course, is bound by incest taboo. In this way, the society is brought together by a complicated network of marriages connecting families. In detail, the system of marital exchange that can be found in a survey of many societies vary almost infinitely, but they can be reduced to a few broadly defined types. The most fundamental distinction is that between closed or elementary systems on the one hand and open or complex systems on the other. Elementary systems of marriage. All elementary systems are characterized by preferential marriage, that is, a marriage in which ego's spouse is someone who is already related to him in the kinship system. There are two subtypes, restricted and generalized. In restricted exchanges, two kin groups other than families supply each other with marriage partners. The men of one group marry women from the other and vice versa. Such systems occur in all parts of the world, but they are particularly common in Australia. The other subtype of elementary marital exchange, generalized exchange, also involved preferential marriage between groups larger than the conjugal family. This type of a system is found among the Kachin Hills people of northeast Burma. The preferred marriage takes place between a boy and a daughter of one of his mother's brothers. Open system of marriages. Open or complex generalized exchange such as prevails in the United States, most of the Europe and much of Africa is the most flexible type of system. Here, the incest taboo is the only kinship rule that determines marital choice. There is no preferential marriage. In all cases, the primary and secondary incest taboos merely prohibit certain marriages. They do not specify either which particular person one may marry or which group one must choose from. Open or complex system of marriage choice must be divided into two categories. A. Marriages arranged by the parents of prospective partners or by agents of parents, known as go-betweens. B. Marriages arranged by the prospective partners themselves. The former has been the common system in China and Japan for centuries and has only lately been challenged. The same pattern exists in rural Ireland. In India, two families sometimes agree if one gives birth to a boy and other to a girl, and the boy and girl shall marry when they come of age. It does not seem possible to give the individual less choice than by arranging his marriage between he and fiancé are born. Let's now discuss the change and the present position of the institution of marriage. The institution of marriage is in a continuous state of flux. Recent major changes include change towards same-sex marriages. The Netherlands became the first country in recent history to have legalized same-sex marriages. Since December 19, 2000, Dutch same-sex couples have been permitted to marry and adopt children with the full privileges enjoyed by heterosexual married couples. Belgium was the next country to follow suit in 2003. This trend continues as a majority of citizens in diverse countries and states approve of same-sex marriages, and their governments respond to public opinion by legalizing them. Over the time, the marriage system has undergone changes in India also. There exists also a social protest against the restrictions connecting with Sagotra and Pravara marriages, as it limits the choice in finding out the mates. Polygamy has come to be declared illegal. Widow remarriage is now no more considered wrong. Divorce, which was not known to ancient law, has been accepted. Under the Hindu Marriage Act 1955, marriage can be effected between the spouses not within the degrees of prohibited relationship unless the custom or usage governing each of them permits such a marriage. The Indian society is undergoing a drastic change due to economic prosperity and the internet revolution that has exposed people to social trends prevalent across the world. Marriage has turned out to be the most revolutionized institution of our conservative Indian society. The way people perceive marriage, organize ceremonies, and build relationships are changing in tandem, leading to a new phase of the Indian society. As joint family system is being replaced by nuclear families, the closeness and the level of comfort between the partners is increasing. They have ample space to talk and strengthen their relationships. To conclude, I would say that despite so many changes which have occurred over a period of time within the institution of marriage, it has continued to exist as one of the fundamental institutions of society. With this, we conclude today's lecture. Thank you very much.